Hello, gringos y gringas, beaners and beanerettes. Welcome back to El Racist Latino for another cover of the news for today. And I think it's very obvious for the past, not only has news in general have been kind of slow these last days, but basically the only piece of news that is coming out is this kind of back and forth with the ceasefire deal made between Israel and Hamas, or well, Trump also. But it's been they've been flirting with for the past. I mean, the ceasefire is only 9 days, and more than half of that time, they've been fighting, pointing fingers like the Spider-Man meme. Who broke the ceasefire? Oh, they're not doing this. Where are the dead hostages? Where is this? But these militias and this and this and everybody's. It looks like instead of everybody just being reasonable and trying to be patient, like, hey, we understand that the dead bodies are under tons of rubble, and hey, we understand this, and being flexible, which would be the attitude you would take if you really wanted to stop the war. But it seems like it's all been about finding excuses, the minimal excuses, just to resume the war. This is what it feels like to me. Only like excuses, and finding the small letters in the contract just to find an excuse to cancel the ceasefire deal and just reignite the war. And now it seems that like it has happened. So we will check some news sources and see what's going on. We're gonna check news sources from both sides, both pro-Israel and pro-Palestine, let's say, and find out. Let's see if we can get to the truth on who really broke the ceasefire deal, right? So we're gonna start with Tusi. Tusi is, I think he's Iranian, but he is pro-Israel, like a lot. So let's take into account, we're gonna start with a pro-Israel view on this. And obviously, like every news channel, or almost every news channel we have nowadays, is very subjective. So they have a view and they want to support their view. In this case, this guy is normally pro-Israeli. I haven't seen this video, but I'm going to assume that this guy is going to blame Hamas for breaking the deal. And let's see what he tells us about what did Hamas do to break this deal. If this guy is saying that Israel is the one breaking the deal, I will be very surprised and I will eat my words, but I doubt it. So this is 30 something minutes. We're not gonna watch it all, of course, but let's see if we can get some important information.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to 2C TV, your global news channel. We come to you guys with some breaking news from the Middle East. Hamas and the Islamist leadership of Gaza have made a huge mistake, thinking that they are now calling the shots, thinking that they are now in charge. Well, the Israeli Defense Forces have launched the latest attack despite the ceasefire. This is, of course, following the yellow line violation by the Palestinian in Gaza. The American troops have also arrived in the Middle East. We also do have our live feed from Khan Yunis in the Gaza Strip, as the Egyptians are helping to essentially bring some order to the area. They are sorting out the rubble. They are basically cleaning up the absolute mess that Hamas have left behind.
Exactly. We spoke about this last week, that part of the second phase of the deal is that Egypt was going to send heavy machinery to start clearing the rubble. So this is what he's talking about.
Now, I'm going to give you guys the actual latest update on what we're actually dealing with, and I'm going to get your reaction live as usual. First things first, how did this even start? Well, the Americans have been sent to the Middle East. The US Army troops have now arrived at Tel Aviv's Ben Gurion Airport. They did arrive on two C-17 aircraft to join a military coordination. There's going to be basically a whole civil and military center set up by the Israeli government, and the US military are not there. The center is essentially tasked with monitoring the Gaza ceasefire and also to help facilitate humanitarian aid delivery. Now, while this was going on, the Gazans Well, Hamas are refusing to disarm. President Trump has already sent out his final ultimatum.
I don't think disarming was part of the official deal, right? What do you mean refusing to disarm?
To Hamas.
Just an excuse to blame it on them? We will see.
But the US military being there to monitor the situation.
Gaza attacked after yellow line violation. So what does that mean? Does that mean that there is actually the yellow line violation would be, we saw that, right, last time, the lines in Gaza, where were they supposed to retreat to? And I think the first one was the yellow line. So does that mean that Israel actually violated the ceasefire deal?
We are already receiving a bit of a green light by the White House that the Israeli Defense Forces could go in and finish the job again. But Hamas have now come back out with some set of conditions, including, for example, Israel to give up its nuclear. If Israel doesn't give up its nuclear, then Hamas will not disarm. Again, they think that they are in charge. Let's not forget that the Israeli Defense Forces still control the majority of the Gaza Strip.
That is a nice card under their sleeve, right? Hey, we will disarm if you get rid of your nuclear weapons that nobody officially wants to admit that they have, but everybody kind of knows. It's like the worst secret in the planet, Israel having nukes. Like everybody knows, but nobody wants to admit. They don't want to be part of the proliferate treaty. They don't want to. They are the only nuclear country that does not form part of the non-proliferation treaty. So yeah, that's actually interesting from Hamas. A very interesting play they did. Just well, okay, we'll disarm if you also disarm.
They only withdrew recently to a yellow line just around the center. Now, following the yellow line violation, the IDF carried out the latest airstrikes and eliminated 11 members of the Abu Shaban family. They were returning home, allegedly, after the displacement that happened over the last couple of years. They did cross the yellow line, and despite the warnings, this continued to happen. Now, of course, the IDF soldiers are on standby, they're on alert, because they've been told, well, this is a ceasefire, you're not supposed to be doing anything, but if anybody crosses the line, you need to be alert, because anything could happen. They might say they're a civilian, they might not be civilian, you don't know anymore, because these guys, the Islamists, don't tend to always wear their uniforms. They wear their uniforms, the green uniforms with the green flags of Hamas, only when they are in a safe place, when they feel confident about it. Now, in terms of Hamas refusing to disarm, this is where it gets complicated, because the Americans have said, we don't really care about your demands, you have to disarm immediately. That's not happening. Now, senior Hamas leader Mohammed Nasser, who's part of the political bureau of Hamas, has now said in an interview that it really depends on what we agree if you want us to disarm. It depends on the details. Let's quickly go to that interview.
So yes or no, will Hamas give up its weapons?
لا أستطيع الإجابة بنعم أو لا بصراحة. هذا يتوقف على طبيعة المشروع. مشروع نزع السلاح الذي تتكلم عنه ماذا يعنى به؟
disarm.
لمن سيسلم السلاح؟
لمن
سيسلم السلاح؟ وفي سؤال، هل الإسرائيليون سيسلمون السلاح النووي الموجود داخل الكيان الصهيوني؟
I don't know if this guy didn't get the memo on what the plan is for Gaza by President Trump and the new committee that's going to be set up. He says, well, who do we give the weapons to? We know you know. And then he says, why? Why? Because you were getting hammered. You don't really have a proper leadership in terms of commanders on the ground. So they think that they can still pretend to hold some leverage. They don't. One issue is that with the US military now being on the ground in Israel, J.D. Vance has now also been is going to be sent to the Middle East. J.D. Vance, the vice president, is now flying to Israel on Monday to essentially sell the next phase of the peace plan. This is the part where Hamas will have to get disarmed. And then somebody else, the committee, will be set up to run the Gaza Strip. Now, this is supposed to be diplomacy, but J.D. Vance is there on behalf of the White House to put pressure on Gaza to release the hostages' bodies, to get Hamas to end the war, and to stabilize the region. The regime change is guaranteed by the White House. They've said, we are not going to allow things to go back to normal. This is regime change in Gaza. Now, majority of the time, Hamas have been busy fighting against the other tribes in Gaza. they are struggling apparently to find the remains of the dead hostages. But they have enough time to send messages to the White House. They've now called on President Trump and the mediators, including Qatar and Egypt and Turkey, to bear some responsibility by monitoring Israel's violations and basically forcing Israel to respect the ceasefire agreement. That's not really a surprise, because that's usually the tactic used by the Islamists in general. It's taqiyya, they lie all the time. They say that Israel is breaking the ceasefire. You do realize 3 of the members of the mediators team are Egypt, Turkey, and Qatar. These 3 countries don't like Israel. They don't like the Jews. Are you telling me if Israel were to break the ceasefire, these guys will be okay with it? No, they're going to kick off. They're going to go to President Trump saying, oh, the whole deal is now off. They know that it's not the IDF breaking the ceasefire. They know that Hamas are refusing to disarm. Hamas are refusing or failing to deliver the remains of the hostages. And they know that there are enough Gazans who are walking around, either intentionally or unintentionally, crossing the yellow line, which is the line where the IDF
Yeah,
is...
okay, so yeah, it's this yellow line that we saw not only is about Israel, like where the IDF is allowed to be, they are not allowed to come inside this yellow line, but also apparently Palestinians are not allowed to go outside the yellow line, neither civilians nor, of course, Hamas, obviously. So apparently it was Palestinians that went past the yellow line. So yeah.
was drawn into. Now, there's a lot of warnings every few minutes in the area about where you can or can't go. But they keep doing it. And the IDF soldiers are standing there saying, go back. And if they don't listen, well, it could pose a threat to not just the IDF soldiers, but to the whole of the deal. Now, Hamas are under pressure, so they have actually managed to release another set of remains. So they have now handed over another dead hostage via the Red Cross. The bulldozers are digging through the Gaza's rubble, and they're recovering more. There's support coming from the Turks, but also mostly the Egyptians, who are now on the ground with the bulldozers. The Israeli officials have said that the family of the deceased would be notified after a formal identification process. So we don't actually have any guarantee that the latest remains that have been delivered via Red Cross by Gaza is actually even an Israeli hostage. I mean, it could be. They are desperate right now, so they're going to have to go around, ask around, find out where they've been keeping their dead bodies. This is now the 10th body that has been returned from Gaza to Israel this week since the ceasefire started. But obviously Hamas are still violating the ceasefire, mostly because they're not even disarming, and they don't seem to be giving up, even though they still don't control the Gaza Strip. They are pretending that they are back. They are pretending that they are in full control of Gaza. You're not. The IDF is still there. They're just behind the yellow line. And that yellow line could disappear if you continue. The attacks will continue. Now, there is also a situation right now near Yemen, where the Houthis are based. The Houthis have said that they are not giving up the fight. They are still at war, not just with Israel, but with the whole of the Western world. And they said that they will continue to act like pirates, and they will continue to disrupt the commercial line of the vessels. And we have now received an update that 26 crew members of a vessel believed connected to the United Kingdom have now been evacuated from an oil tanker that has been attacked by the Houthis in Yemen. The rescue operation is still ongoing. Now, the Houthis haven't, as I said, they haven't just attacked multiple times the state of Israel. They've also constantly attacked all the other countries. They attack their vessels, they kidnap people, vessels from the Netherlands, Australia, Britain. And it's fascinating that the governments of these countries don't seem to care when an enemy is attacking their citizens or their business interests. They don't care. And then they're surprised when one country gets attacked, and that is Israel. And when somehow Israel decides to respond, they say, whoa, an enemy attacked you, and you want to fight back. Really? Why? So they seem to think that defending yourself is abnormal.
All right, so we know this guy's opinion. This is why the ceasefire has been broken. Of course, it's not Israel's fault. It's always Hamas, the boogeyman of the 21st century. And yeah, now that he's talking about the Houthis and why, yeah, all of that stuff. So let's now take a close look at some, let's say, pro-Palestine, we can say, or even less biased perspective. Al
The
Jazeera is
fighting
a
in southern Gaza.
Al Jazeera is a good example, so let's take a look what they have to say.
The fighting in southern Gaza comes as Hamas rejected a U.S. warning that it's planning an imminent attack in breach of the ceasefire. The U.S. State Department says it has informed the guarantor nations of the Gaza peace agreement of credible reports indicating an imminent ceasefire violation by Hamas against the people of Gaza. It goes on to say this planned attack against Palestinian civilians would constitute a direct and grave violation of the ceasefire agreement. Let's speak to Hani Mahmoud, who's live for us in Gaza City. Hani, let's address firstly the attack in Rafah. Hamas says, as we've been saying earlier, that it is
Rafah.
committed to the ongoing
So they
ceasefire.
attacked Rafah, basically the safest place, the place where Israel sent all of the Palestinians for their safety, right? They were displaced from the north all the way slowly to the south. People have been sent from town to town, moving around for the past 2 years, I guess. And they said everybody should head to Rafah because that's the safest place to be. This is where the refugees are. It's the biggest refugee camp. It's where the aid is being given. Or no, it used to be, but not anymore. I also read some news that Israel canceled the 600 trucks of aid coming in. Maybe for this reason. Let's see if we can, because the other dude didn't mention anything about the aid, conveniently. Let's see.
Ceasefire. Nevertheless, these claims by Israel that they were responding to Hamas fire in Rafah, what more details are emerging?
As usual.
Well, so far we know in a statement released by Al-Qassam Brigade categorically denying the accusation and the allegations by the Israeli military and the political level and calling them false and baseless and citing that these were unverified claims by the Israeli military and emphasizing the areas where the Israeli military claimed attacks happened or carried out by Al-Qassam Brigade. In fact, it's an area that is considered to be a red zone and under full Israeli control. And also it went on to elaborate that the Israeli retaliation explains that the Israeli Prime Minister and the Israeli military are more interested in sabotaging the agreement rather than keeping it, and also referring to the past few days, many of the Israeli violations, including shooting and killing family members who tried to go back to their homes in the eastern part of Gaza City while crossing what the Israeli military called the imaginary yellow line that has been subjecting many of the areas across the Gaza streets, neighborhoods, and part of residential clusters as deadly areas, because on the ground that line does not exist. These attacks just cast a wave of panics and
Yeah, so this is a gray area, right? Because we have, so it is confirmed apparently. If we hear it, this is the way that I kind of judge things. If the both sides of the argument, pro-Palestine in this case and pro-Israel, if they both kind of say the same, then I kind of assume that is confirmed, right? So this guy is saying that there was some Palestinians breaking or going through this yellow line. However, the other guy said that that this area should have been, there should be signs all over, like don't go from here, blah blah blah. We do know from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation that when they were giving aid, there was no signals, there was no signs, even though it would have been the easiest way to do it. Just don't go past here, don't go past here, and that was their excuse. So they were, for them to shoot at the people who wanted aid, is because they got out of line. These were the lines. Well, then put some signs, and they didn't put the signs. So I wonder if they were actually putting some signs, like this other dude says, like this Tutsi guy said. But I would actually, from previous experience, which like the GHF is way easier to signalize because it's a very small close environment. It's the same place that they use all the time, and they had enough time, weeks, to signalize everything, and they didn't. Now you're telling me that after only 9 days, the whole yellow line has been signalized with warnings, don't go past here. And then when civilians just, hey, I'm just going home, finally I'm going home, maybe they don't see any, like, why would civilians break this? Like, why would civilians go through a warning line? Why would a family with kids pass through a line that makes it unsafe for their kids from here on end? So my personal opinion, of course I have no proof, but my personal opinion is that there was no signs. There was no signs. They simply made the digital yellow line. There's no, like, in physical, in the place when you are there in Gaza, there are no lines, you know. It's just basically one street. On this side is safe, on this side is not safe. Nobody knows that except the IDF, you know. And the way that they warn people that they cross the line is by shooting at them. Same as the GHF, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, the logistics that they played. So I'm gonna go with there were no signs, in my perspective, my personal opinion.
And fear among population who are trying just to shake off some of the fear that they had over the past 2 years and the trauma that evolved over the past 2 years due to the ongoing heavy artillery, the mass bombardment of the area, and they hope this is not going to be a full-scale attack by the Israeli military.
Hani, let me ask you about where you are. Of course, you are in Gaza City. I mean, what are the principal challenges there, given the scale of devastation that we've seen in the city in recent months and the fact people have very little to return to?
Oh, absolutely. And this has been the major issue, and everything is quite limited here in terms, whether it's physical or in terms of when it comes to things that people are hoping for and aspiring for. There is little room left for people to heal and to grow properly. Everything happened at a very fast pace that it did not leave a proper option or proper opportunities for people to heal. There is one example that we keep seeing evolving across the city, that people were not given the opportunity, for example, to mourn and to reprieve properly, given the pace of the attacks that happened due to the ongoing attacks. And right now, at these days, there is still haven't been given the opportunity to do so because of many of their family members are buried underneath pile of rubble, the ruins of many of them buildings that have been destroyed over the past 2 years. And that's just one element. That's one form of the trauma that's been evolving on. There are a lot of things going on also in terms of the physical loss as well as the psychological trauma that keeps evolving on and on.
Hani, many thanks for the update there. Hani Mohamed in Gaza City.
Don't miss out. Get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera.
Okay, so I guess we are slowly coming to the middle. Gaza ceasefire. The BBC, Trump says Gaza ceasefire still in place. This is an hour ago, and Hamas accuses. And Israel and Hamas are Spider-Man meme accusing each other as usual.
President Trump has insisted the ceasefire in Gaza is still in place, despite a weekend...
No, it's not. That's just Trump wanting to save his ego. Because a week ago, he was the hero of the world. Because he said himself, the first time in 3,000 years or something, that there has been peace in the Middle East. Dude, it lasted 9 days. So his ego very much wants this ceasefire deal to keep on. But yeah.
Weekend of violence, which saw Israel and Hamas accuse each other of breaching the deal. Well, health officials in the territory say that Israeli airstrikes have killed more than 40 people. Israel says the strikes were in response to attacks on its troops. International journalists, including the BBC, are banned from reporting.
Really, IDF? So the IDF... The IDF killed 40 people because they say someone attacked them. Yeah, I heard that before.
From Gaza. Lucy Williamson reports now from Jerusalem.
9 days of quiet, then this. Gaza's ceasefire hung by a thread as Israel struck targets across the south and centre of the Strip. In response, it said, to attacks by Hamas on its troops. Among the
Where?
targets, this beachfront cafe, where a senior Hamas commander and 5 other fighters were killed. But doctors said many of those arriving at hospital were civilians, including children. Where is the agreement? Demanded displaced resident Rafat al-Makdid. Where is Trump? And where are those who guaranteed this weak deal? Israel's army has denied reports that its response was triggered by a clash between Hamas and a pro-Israel militia in Rafah, saying Hamas had launched several direct attacks on its troops.
Yeah, they say pro-Israel militia. Some other sources say that Israel funds these people. It's like the private mercenaries of Israel. So I do not see any other logical conclusion. Like, why would a militia support Israel just out of the kindness of their hearts? They have to be funded and paid for by someone, right? Like, you can do things by passion. Like, for example, well, of course, Hamas is being funded, obviously, by someone. Iran, Qatar, some people, there's many sources. Biden gave them some money also. Netanyahu gave them some money, actually, himself. But the fighters, they are fighting for their home, right? But who would fight in Gaza in favor of Israel for no reason except, personal interest, like money? I just don't see it. Like, this militia is, like, the reports I've heard before are, staying, in my opinions, in common sense, they are solid, which is they are just the private mercenaries of Israel, basically. Some say they are ISIS members. So
It released this footage showing the moment, it says, Hamas fighters crossed into an area under Israeli military control and were hit by an airstrike.
Today, the IDF announced terrorists fired an anti-tank missile and gunfire towards our troops operating in the area of Rafah to dismantle terrorist...
Something to pay attention is that if Israel is reporting something in English, it's not for other Israelis. It's for the West, because otherwise they would do it in Hebrew.
Infrastructure, all in accordance with the ceasefire agreement. Now, in response, the IDF began striking in the area to eliminate the threat.
Hamas said it remained committed to the truce and had found the body of another Israeli hostage, which it would hand over.
So I guess, in theory, all they did was, this girl was saying that they attacked a tank, but they had videos of them just walking around. Where's the video of them attacking a tank?
If field conditions allowed. But its presence on the streets...
And it's not, I'm not just saying that I need proof just because it's Israel. If Hamas would say something, I would also want video proof. If Hamas says it's Israel's fault, I also want to know what's going on. So I am just getting to my conclusions from previous experiences. I am concluding that I am 80% sure that there was no signs in this yellow line crossing that Palestinians violated, because in the previous it was like this. Previously they did the same when they were delivering aid through their GAZA humanitarian foundation. But I understand. I'm not saying that Hamas is always telling the truth or whatever, but Israel also, they are all lying. Everybody's lying for their own self-interest. So I want to see some proof. And even if some Hamas or Palestinians cross the yellow line, there's no need to bomb or kill anybody. You can just fucking use a megaphone. Why does every answer has to be violent? Can you just know, hey dude, you are crossing the line, please go back? Is that so difficult? I don't see it. Even if they if they attack a tank, 100%. They violated the ceasefire. I need to see proof of that. Otherwise, all they have is just people walking around crossing imaginary lines. Then just let them know, man. Put an alarm. There's a million ways that you can let them know before you use violence. Unless you just want to use violence. That's my point. My point is that they're just itching the fingers for them to do anything even remotely close to breaking any kind of deal so they can start bombing again. There's no warnings, there's no megaphones, there's no alarms. It's just bomb. That's the only warning. The warning is bombs. There's no warnings, basically.
Is a reminder that the next steps in this deal, including a transfer of power, still have to be hammered out. Until then, this truce is holding Gaza in a fragile limbo between an unfinished war and a yet unknown peace. Lucy Williamson, BBC News, Jerusalem.
Let's go live to our Middle East correspondent, Yolande Knell, who's in Jerusalem. And Yolande, we know that Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are expected to be travelling to the region today. What are they likely to want to do to maintain the ceasefire?
So according to Israeli media, those two special envoys have already arrived from the US. They had been expected here to talk about phase 2 of the ceasefire deal, how to move things forwards. But it looks like, even before they left from the US, they were having to shore up the existing ceasefire deal. Now, the key questions that remain unresolved from President Trump's peace plan are all about the future of Gaza, the future of Hamas, who will govern there, how to get Hamas to disarm, what the security situation will be like in Gaza so that ultimately Gaza can be rebuilt. At the moment, it all looks very uncertain, and they are looking too, of course, to the regional mediators who've had such an important role here. We know that in Cairo today, you've got the Hamas chief negotiator, Khalil al-Hayya. He's been meeting Egyptian mediators. There are Palestinian political factions due to meet there as well.
And Yolande, on the ground, how have the weekend's events left people feeling? Because presumably there was huge relief last week, and that must now have been rocked. I mean, confidence in the ceasefire must have been rocked.
Definitely. I mean, this really caused a lot of uncertainty. And of course, there were many people grieving lost loved ones. There was one father who was burying his son this morning in Khan Yunis. He was a 14-year-old boy killed in a tent in Al-Muwasi just yesterday. And his father said that throughout the war, he had kept him by his side. And then because this ceasefire was in place with what he said were international guarantees, he'd felt confident in the past few days just to let his son have a taste of freedom going out with his friends. And then he heard, people calling him from the hospital yesterday to say that his son's body was in the morgue, that he had been killed. 45 people killed across the Gaza Strip, according to hospitals and other sources as well, in the past day. But, now there is a bit of a sense that things are back on in terms of the ceasefire. But still, one person told me that the market prices, such is the kind of volatility of all of this, when he went out to go and buy things in the market, already, there had been panic buying. He said he couldn't find any flour in the center of the Gaza Strip yesterday, and prices had risen for people as a result of all of this.
Yolande Knell, thanks very much.
Yeah.
US President Donald Trump.
So, let me start. We're gonna check this video out. Hamas leadership may not be involved in ceasefire violations, says Trump. Now, let me say first that I do not like or trust the DW news source, from whichever side. I don't really like them. I caught them lying way too many times. So, huge, not even a grain of salt, fucking tons of salt when we are watching this video.
Donald Trump insists the ceasefire he helped broker between Israel and Hamas remains in effect. The two sides blamed each other for breaches on Sunday. Israel struck targets across Gaza after it says Hamas militants killed 2 of its soldiers. Hamas denies it was involved. According to Gazan health officials, dozens of people were killed in the Israeli airstrike. According to Gazan health, 2 of its soldiers targets across Gaza after it says Hamas militants killed 2 of its soldiers. Hamas denies it was involved.
Okay, so apparently Israel is claiming that Hamas killed 2 IDF soldiers. However, Hamas denies that.
According to
Let's try not to get to any conclusions yet.
Gazan health officials, dozens of people were killed in the Israeli airstrikes.
Yeah, and of course, 2 IDF soldiers got killed, and therefore they have to kill 44 civilians with kids included. That's how things balance out in the eyes of Israel.
Running for cover from an Israeli strike on a house in central Gaza. Further south, the city of Khan Yunis, once again under attack, less than a fortnight since the ceasefire began.
So what's the bombings in Rafah or in Khan Yunis? I guess it's Khan Yunis. I just heard Rafah from the very first source. So, and I have heard Khan Yunis already 2 or 3 times. So I guess let's keep, yeah, they showed videos of the bomb, of Rafah being bombed. So maybe they bombed both towns.
And familiar scenes at Nasser Hospital, with children among the victims of renewed Israeli strikes.
Yeah. This might be the father that they were talking about with the 14-year-old. That the guy was keeping his 14-year-old by his side for 2 years just to protect him. And then for 9 days we have a ceasefire. He says, okay, you know what? Go play with your friends. And he dies. Dude.
With the crucial Rafah crossing on the Egyptian border still closed, there's little let-up in Gaza's humanitarian crisis.
Yeah, and now what about the aid? We haven't heard
There's
anything
often
about
no
aid.
food or drink for the children. We have no diapers. I have orphans to look after, and nothing to feed or care for them.
Israel says it retaliated against attacks.
I guess a pro-Israel person would say, well, but this kid looks well-fed. He doesn't look, malnourished. So that's an argument. I mean, this kid looks pretty healthy. I'm not claiming anything. I'm just trying to be unbiased and point out what I see with my own 2 eyes.
I have orphans to look after, and nothing to feed or care for them.
Israel says it retaliated against attacks on its forces in the south of Gaza.
We are prepared for any scenario. This blatant violation of the agreement by Hamas has been and will be answered by a firm and powerful response by us. We will continue to act with determination to safeguard the security interests of the State of Israel.
Despite the breaches of the ceasefire, both sides insist they remain committed to the truce.
Both sides.
Also in Khan Yunis, construction crews search for the bodies of hostages thought to be buried under the rubble of destroyed buildings. Families say the war will not be over until the last of the remains are returned.
18 families are still...
This is the kind of unflexibility I'm talking about. I apologize. I am really sorry for those people that are dead there under the rubble. Pointing out that some of them were killed actually by Israel while bombing. But you cannot keep killing people who are alive just because some dead bodies haven't been returned. I don't think that is I don't know. That doesn't sound right. Like, if you don't return 10 dead bodies, I will kill people. What the fuck? I don't know. Maybe I'm just weird. Who knows?
Still waiting to bring their loved ones home for a proper burial, to say goodbye and to find peace. We will not rest until every family has that final moment and the chance to begin healing.
So when they say we will not rest, it means we will not stop bombing them until they return. So not only they have to dig through the rubble that Israel did to dig out the dead bodies, but also at the same time they're gonna keep bombing until they do. It's like, man, a little bit flexibility, just 1% flexibility.
Diplomatic efforts to implement Donald Trump's peace plan are set to resume. A top-level US delegation led by the Vice President J.D. Vance is expected...
By the way, I want to point something out. Last week I said, I don't know if I said this in this live stream or not, but I was under the impression that Israel said that Palestinians were not allowed to swim in the water. However, I see a lot of Palestinians here in the water, obviously, so I don't know if that little nuanced detail, now that I see video evidence, maybe they are allowed to swim. I mean, that doesn't make anything better or worse. It's just, it makes it a little better, I guess, that they are allowed to swim in their own beaches. But it's kind of a contradiction of what I thought, of what I have heard. I have heard that Israel has forbade them to swim in the Gaza beaches. But here there's people, so at least.
In Israel this week, and Hamas says its chief negotiator will travel to Egypt for more talks.
Well, U.S. President Donald Trump says his diplomatic delegation will be in the region to, quote, check on how things are going. Here he is speaking with reporters on Air Force One.
We want to make sure that it's going to be very peaceful with Hamas. And as you know, they've been quite rambunctious. They've been doing some shooting, and we think maybe the leadership isn't involved in that, some rebels within, but either way it's going to be handled properly. It's going to be handled toughly but properly.
Is the ceasefire still in place?
Yeah, it is.
DW's Ben Fazulin is following events for us from Jerusalem. Ben, President Trump, they're saying Hamas leadership may not have been involved in the violations, and the group says it remains committed to the ceasefire agreement. What more do we know about yesterday's violence then?
Yeah, this is the biggest test to the ceasefire deal yet. Nicole, we're talking about an extremely fragile ceasefire, also a vague deal in so many circumstances, and an explosive situation here. There were strikes across the Palestinian territory conducted by Israel. Israel saying that it hit dozens of Hamas targets. Reports, though, of dozens of Palestinians dead, including children. Israel, though, says that the ceasefire is now being enforced. So it sounds like an on-again, off-again situation being described by the US Vice President, J.D. Vance, as being something that, comes and goes. I mean, it's a really tricky situation and hard for us journalists as well. We're not allowed into Gaza to find out exactly what's going on. But Trump was referring there to the rival gangs and families that are vying for power at the moment. It's the perfect time for them to try to mark their territory when it comes to the Hamas leadership. And Trump also referred to the Hamas leadership. It said that it is committed to the ceasefire, but it's saying that its communications have been cut off for months to the south to any remaining units there, and that it's not in control and is not responsible. The other thing we have to mention is that this is a Trump-branded ceasefire. So the US president wants to see this through.
Yeah. You mentioned J.D. Vance there. He's actually expected in Israel tomorrow. Trump's envoys, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, will be arriving in Israel later today. Do we know what's on the agenda?
This is exactly why Mr. Trump has sent his top envoys ASAP to the region, and according to Israeli and US officials, they're arriving here today in the region. Top of the agenda is going to be ensuring that that ceasefire continues, keeping the peace and keeping the ceasefire deal moving. That's the difficult part. At the moment, it's stuck in first gear. To get into second gear, it's going to have...
There has never been, every day people has died, right? So which kind of peace can you call this? I keep hearing that every day somebody kills someone from each side. So how can you call this peace? I don't think there ever was any peace. I don't think this ceasefire was applied, not even one day. I mean, you can take the theory, hey, you are not bombing everyone, so I guess that's something, yeah. But in theory, that's not what ceasefire means. Ceasefire means hold your fire, bro. Not fire a little bit only. What the fuck?
To have to start looking at some of these vague terms and ideas under President Trump's 20-point plan. There's a lot to get through and various phases. And in this second phase, they're going to have to work out who are going to be the international peacekeeping force that will come in to make sure that things are okay. The Palestinian policemen who have been trained to secure that peace, and also this transitional government.
Trained by who? Who trained them? I want to know that.
It's important that the Palestinians lead in this circumstance.
Part of the ceasefire deal was also that Israel would be letting more aid into Gaza. They halted supplies in response to Hamas's alleged ceasefire violations. Has the flow of goods into the territory now resumed?
There've been a trickle of trucks into the territory through other crossings. Problems, though, with far-right groups at the Kerem Shalom crossing, the main crossing that's said to be opening today, the Rafah border crossing. Hundreds of trucks lined up in Egypt waiting to get through at a time that is just essential, vital for the Palestinian people, with reports of malnutrition and starvation.
DW correspondent Ben Fazulin in Jerusalem. Thanks, Ben.
So, let's see what we got here. Let's see what Fox News has to say about it.
Thank you all for joining us here at Live Now from Fox on this Monday, October 20th. We are taking a live look here at the White House over in Washington, D.C. as we continue to monitor all of your top stories throughout this week and everything that happened throughout the weekend. My name is Corella Hara, and I'll be with you throughout the next several hours, again, showcasing all of those live images and live events from around the world. And at this time, we do want to focus the latest on the developments in the Middle East. Taking a look here at these images that we're getting out of Gaza at this time. Take a look at that. A lot of smoke out there in the distance. Not entirely sure what that smoke is at this time. But the Associated Press recently reporting that Gaza's fragile ceasefire facing its first major test on Sunday as Israeli forces launched a wave of deadly strikes, saying Hamas militants had killed 2 soldiers, and an Israeli security official said the transfer of aid into the territory was halted. Military later saying that
that's what I mean. You kill, like, even, let's just assume, for the sake of argument, that Hamas did break the ceasefire and killed 2 IDF soldiers. Is that really the reason to halt the aid? Like, that's just cruel on purpose. Why are you... That's, in theory, that is a war crime. Why are you penalizing the civilian population because some Hamas guy or someone killed 2 IDF soldiers? They're not civilian. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to dehumanize IDF soldiers, but they're soldiers, man. You know? They are responding, killing civilians and halting aid for children. It's just, for me, that's even more inhumane. I don't know.
Resumed enforcing the ceasefire, and the official confirmed that aid deliveries would resume today on Monday. The official spoke on condition of anonymity to the Associated Press because he was not authorized to discuss the issue in the media. Joining us now to continue this conversation even further is Jonathan Karinkas. He is a senior fellow with the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. And Jonathan, we appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me on, and a good morning.
Good morning to you as well. So you can offer us a unique perspective on this entire issue because you are actually based in Israel right now. Given the fact that the ceasefire was first established a couple of weeks ago, what are you hearing on the ground? What is the sentiment like at this time?
Yes, so the situation on the ground is that currently it's relatively stable, and it appears that both sides, Israel and Hamas, have been told by President Trump and his team to get on with it and to get back to the ceasefire, despite the fact that Hamas is violating it repeatedly, and Israel yesterday responded also by using force in self-defense. What we've had over the last few days, just to recap briefly for our viewers, is that the major event was the return of 20 live Israeli hostages. They were returned to their families. That's a massive milestone, and that is the biggest part of phase 1. Now, the second part of phase one, which has not yet been completed,
And
is
don't they give trust credits to Hamas for doing that? This is one of my problems also. Like Israel is like a milestone, something that they achieved. But they didn't achieve it. They tried to look for I mean, that's what they said. They said they were looking for those hostages and they never found them. So if Hamas doesn't return them, then they will never be there. They will never be rescued or whatever. So don't Hamas... why can I not see one pro-Israeli person saying, you know what, kudos to Hamas for returning the hostages, you know, and kudos also because the hostages looked as well as you could look after being inside a hole for 2 years, you know, in difference with the Palestinian hostages that were returned also, or prisoners or whatever you want to call them, that were returned also, that are telling pretty ugly stories. So they were not looking as good, right? So zero credit from Israel to anybody. Well, I don't see any spokesman from Hamas doing the same. So it's like, nobody gets a little bit of praise. Nobody goes like, you know, let's admit that at least Hamas did this. Like, not even that. They take it like an accomplishment, like it's Israeli did it. Oh yeah, we made it, we did it. You didn't do shit, bro. All you did was sign a paper, basically, you know. And actually, Hamas returned the hostages, kind of trusting, you know, that that was the only leverage they had. So they are now, like this guy Tusi was saying, the first source that we saw, that was their only leverage. They really don't have any more leverage right now. So, I don't know how difficult it would be to get more hostages or whatever, because the hostages were actually prisoners of war. All of them were IDF soldiers. Like the civilian hostages that were taken from October 7 had all been returned months ago. So there actually has not been civilian hostages taken by Hamas in a long time. There have all been IDF soldiers. In theory, this is you should call this a prisoner of war, not a hostage. So there's zero there's zero appreciation for, you know, let's take for de-escalation, you know. Hey, you know, I admit that they did this, so let's give them, I don't know, you know, some kind of middle, man, like show that you have the willingness, or that you have at least some kind of wish for this thing to end. They are showing the complete opposite, that they want to keep this thing going and looking for any excuse. I've been saying this since the beginning of the stream. Is everybody, and this guy, I mean, he's pretty famous, pro-Israel propagandist, so it's the same that we've been hearing always. It's like, we do nothing wrong, it's all their fault, we cannot admit anything good that they do whatever we want or we will kill you, and when they do what you want, you don't even say thank you. It's a fucking, dude, what the hell?
That Hamas are supposed to hand over all of the bodies of the hostages that they took 2 years ago on October 7 and murdered in captivity. So far, Israel has received less than half of the 28 bodies that we know Hamas is keeping. And that's a major violation of the agreement.
Oh my God.
In Israel, we understand, and I think the Americans see it the same way,
That's
that
what I mean.
Hamas is intentionally dragging its feet.
Intentionally.
And in Israel, the perspective
You have heavy machinery digging through rubble, trying to find these dead bodies, and they say it's intentional. You see, there's no gray area, man. There's no willingness to try to find that middle ground.
That as long as phase one isn't implemented, then there's no reason to go over and transition to phase two, because phase one should happen first and should be completed in its entirety and successfully.
I want to put up a post here from the Israeli
So let's
forces.
stop the aid. Let's punish the civilian population because dead bodies hasn't been returned. That's this Israel solution.
And again, we are taking a live look out here.
And then they are pissed. What happened? Why is everybody hating Israel? The anti-Semitism. It's shit like this, bro. It's shit like this that makes people pissed. You're stopping the aid food that is supposed to go to children, or it's gonna go to everybody, but dude, there's a lot of children there. Half of the population is children, and you're stopping that because some dead bodies haven't been returned. Give me a break, bro. Shut the fuck up.
Units in Gaza. But this is what the Israel Defense Forces said on X. In accordance with the directive of the political echelon and following a series of significant strikes in response to Hamas's violations, the IDF has begun the renewed enforcement of the ceasefire in line with the terms of the agreement. The IDF will continue to uphold the ceasefire agreement and will respond firmly to any violation of it. Jonathan, what are some of the challenges that the IDF is facing right now, even with this ceasefire in place, to be able to get control of the situation, and as you mentioned, to make sure that the bodies of the remaining hostages who are deceased are returned?
Yes, what's happening on the ground and what has been happening in the last week or so is that Hamas is busy violating the agreement in several ways. Basically executing Palestinians on the streets. They're rounding up people that they don't like, people that they see
I heard about
as
that.
political rivals, people from clans.
I think these people that they are rounding up are these militias that are pro-Israel, that when the ceasefire started, they sent their mercenaries and Hamas were killing those people. This is what I heard. Of course, you have a lot of bullshit here from both sides, but that makes kind of sense. I would say that they would. These are Palestinian people. These mercenaries that are fighting against Hamas, they are Palestinians. They are Arabs, and they are I don't know if Gazans, but definitely not Israeli, and they are attacking Hamas for what reason? Again, we come to that point, and these were the people that this is the thing, they have been trying to put fuel in the fire, the media basically, just by pointing out how many Hamas people are killing now that the ceasefire is in effect, and of course brushing through the fact that these are pro-Israeli militias that are now being activated in the Gaza Strip.
From families that they don't approve of, and they're very bluntly executing them in town squares and then posting the videos proudly on social media in order to deter other people from having
we all saw that.
Having the audacity to stand up against Hamas. So that's one thing that's happening. Severely yesterday, Hamas attacked Israeli troops. Israeli troops were on the correct side of the ceasefire line, where there are supposed to be the yellow line according to the ceasefire. And Hamas attacked Israeli troops in two separate locations. One of those attacks, unfortunately, led to the killing of 2 Israeli soldiers and wounding of 5 others. That
I
is
only
the
heard
backdrop.
about that. We haven't seen any
the tweet that
video
you
proof.
just read now from the IDF. That is what happened yesterday. Hamas attacked in Israel, and unfortunately, Hamas killed 2 Israeli soldiers, and then the IDF responded to it. However, the most important thing is that even though Hamas is in violation of the ceasefire, Israel hasn't responded with any major steps. We see
you killed
the
44
Rafah
people,
gate is
motherfucker.
open
What do you
today.
mean you haven't major step? You killed 44 people. Is that not a major step? That's what I mean, bro. That is what I mean. The dehumanization. 2 IDF soldiers is worth 44. No, it's not even worth 44 civilians, but after they kill 44, they call it nothing major. Bro.
And we see dozens, and it will be eventually hundreds of trucks carrying aid that will be entering Gaza, despite a lot of frustration inside.
Yeah, the last time that I heard dozens, it was actually 18, right? Last week we spoke about this. They said dozens of trucks are already coming in, and it turned out to be 18 trucks, not even 2 dozen. 1.5 dozen, basically.
Israel and Israelis, many are saying, well, Hamas is violating the agreement. They're not handing over bodies of hostages. They're killing our soldiers. They're attacking on the ground, and they're executing Palestinians. And we're going on with business as usual. It's a bit of an odd situation. I'm sure that there's a lot of political pressure on Israel to stay within the realm. And the tweet that you read, where the IDF declares pretty clearly that we're going to implement the ceasefire, is a result of American pressure on Israel.
And we're going to talk about some of the aid going into Gaza in just a minute. But first, to your point within that last answer, I want to put up this social media post from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. It says this: Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, quote, "On behalf of the entire people of Israel, my wife and I send our heartfelt condolences to the families of the Nahal Brigade soldiers, Maj, Yaniv Kula, and Staff Sergeant Itay Yatvets, of blessed memory, who fell in the difficult incident in..."
It sounds like the Hannibal Directive. The Hannibal Directive, for those who don't know, is a military tactic that it exists. It was actually applied on October 7th. There's proof. This is not a conspiracy or anything, where Israel killed their own people for their own political purpose. It started with them killing people that were taken as hostages. Let's use Hamas as an example. So the other side, Hamas, wouldn't have leverage over them. So you kill the hostages and then the leverage is gone. This is how it started. But you can see how it can easily be moved into like anything that is useful politically for us. For example, if we kill 2 IDF soldiers, basically a false flag, and we say it's Hamas, then we have an excuse to keep bombing again. So this sounds a little bit like Hannibal Directive. Maybe not. I could also be biased in this situation, but I haven't seen any proof. They're just saying they just killed 2. We heard about a tank at the beginning. Some lady said they bomb a tank. Maybe this is how they killed the 2 people. But we haven't heard anything about how these people died and like what happened. They just say, no, they just attacked and killed. Yeah, but specific, bro. You had satellite images. Show us the fucking footage.
Rafah. Jonathan, going back to
it's funny how they have these satellite images and they can put circles on each person and zoom so deep that you can see people carrying weapons. So that's how much you can actually zoom into the people walking. But for these claims, there's no footage. Convenient.
Aid going into Gaza right now. What do we know about the organizations that are going to help facilitate?
To be pro-Palestine, you don't need to be pro-Palestine. You don't need to be pro-Palestine. All you need to be is a little bit skeptic and know that, like, ask questions after the statements and not just go like, okay, oh yeah, 2 IDF soldiers were killed by Hamas. Oh, immediately believing what they say from both sides. All you need to do is be a little bit skeptic to realize that it's all bullshit, or to realize or to see the whole narrative just crumble.
Facilitate that. And what do we know about the amount of aid and what's actually going to be going in?
Let's see about the aid.
Yeah, so
Dozens.
There's massive aid coming in,
yes,
hundreds of trucks. I think we will see around 400 trucks if everything goes according to plan. So
supposed to be 600. You're breaking the you're breaking the ceasefire deal. You said 600. This is the same, man. Hamas could actually, if 400 trucks come in, Hamas could be like, you break the deal. You're supposed to be 600. But I haven't heard them. Like, that's what I mean. Just flexibility from both sides. If they only want to bring 400, well, it's better than nothing, right? If they return 10 of the 28 dead bodies, well, 10 is better than nothing, and the rest are coming soon. Just fucking chill for a second, bro.
Loads of aid. Food, medicine, some clothing, some shelter, but the majority of the items will be bulk food and medicine. Water is being provided from Israel and from Egypt with various pipelines that are open and running and providing fresh drinking water for people. But one organization that is making a lot of noise but very little contribution on the ground is UNRWA. UNRWA, the UN Relief and Work Agency, which up until October 7 was really a partner of Hamas and has been really important for Hamas to continue to stay in power, They are
Yeah, okay. Now he's blaming the reason why there's no aid is because the other organization that nobody's ever heard before, they're doing something wrong. Yeah, it's always somebody else's fault always. So yeah, I think we have a pretty clear view now of what's actually going on. I would say that Israel is having very little patience. Let's be diplomatic and say Israel is not being very flexible. They are not showing a lot of willingness to keep this ceasefire or to even want. They obviously want to keep the war going. Obviously. Even with the hostages back or the prisoners of war or whatever you want to call them, even with them back, which was their main excuse, they still want to keep the war going. They still have zero flexibility, zero understanding. There's no willingness to just try to achieve peace. It's the complete opposite, basically. So they stop the aid every time some stupid thing goes over the line. Oh man, it's the world is awake, man. Nobody's believing this bullshit. Nobody believes this anymore, and Israel is becoming, or already became, I think it might be too late, the oppression country of the 21st century. Like, they're gonna be, history books will write about Israel the way that we are writing now about Nazism, in my opinion. We'll see how they see this situation in 20, 30, 40 years, maybe 50, but this is, I think, the way that history will see Israel in the 21st century. Is the way that we now see Nazi Germany in the mid-40s. So anyway, that's all the time that we have for now. We saw both sides of the spectrum. You can make your own conclusions. I also gave my opinion as honest as I could, and I try not to be biased, but it's very hard not to be skeptic, especially when you know the information, especially when you just don't believe everything you hear and you have like follow-up questions to the stuff. So I am sure that I am not the only person who's doing that. That's why everybody's waking up. Everybody has follow-up questions to all of this bullshit. Like, oh, they did this, and oh, they haven't dig up the dead bodies. They crossed the yellow line, and they did this and this and this, and therefore, yeah, fuck that. And they are killing militias who are standing up against them. Yeah, who are these militias? Yeah, because I heard that Netanyahu, these are ISIS members that the Israeli government is paying to be their mercenaries inside the Gaza Strip. So can we dig into that? You know, instead of just assuming that these are just people that Hamas pull out, these are just protesters with signs, Hamas, go away, and then, oh no, boom, boom, boom. Is that really how it's happening? Because that's how they are painting it. And I don't think it's that simple. You know, but that's the way that the media, that they want to portray themselves, and that's why everybody's standing against Israel. Like, when I say everybody, I mean the whole planet. And it's a crazy 180 turn when it comes to the acceptance of the Israeli state. So that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much, everybody, for following up and for hanging out. I forgot to ask you to please subscribe, like, comment, or all of that stuff, share, and yeah, I will see you tomorrow. Peace.